Welcome everyone. In this episode with our guest, we are going to talk about digital intervention in rehabilitation after disease or surgery. And we have a great guest for this episode. Our guest is working as an associate professor at the Amsterdam UMC in the Department of Public and Occupational Health. His work is focused on health effects of work and socioeconomic health inequalities. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest, Dr. Pieter Coenen. Welcome, Peter, again.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so you have, in addition to occupational physical activity, you have also developed some rehabilitation interventions. Could you tell more about those?
Yeah. So I think a lot of my work is on work and on what sort of work situations are healthy and unhealthy, and what we can do about that to make people work in a healthy way. But what I also find very interesting is looking at people with certain diseases or with certain disabilities, and about how we can help them to first of all work, but also work in a good and healthy way. What we're actually doing in our group is we're working on quite some different interventions. And what is probably most interesting for the listeners of this podcast is one of the interventions we do for people who have had a knee replacement surgery. So people who get a new knee, they typically in the hospital get the surgery. They get some checkups. Like the nurses and the doctor, they look at how the wounds are doing after the surgery. But what is typically overlooked is how we can get people back on track after the surgery. And that holds for work, of course, but it also holds for other activities that they do in daily life. So what we are doing in this particular project is that we have developed an app, and with this app we give people personal advice on how they can get back to work and how they can do other activities of daily living after their surgery. And this advice is based on the Delphi study that we did, where we gathered input from experts, from surgeons, from physiotherapists, from occupational physicians, and we really try to make the advice personal, based on the stage of the rehabilitation where the people are in. We also have an accelerometer that we use, so people can also get insights in their activities over the day and over the week, and really see how they're progressing on that. And also we give them input on that. So it's a nice app, and we're now recruiting participants for this study, and we hope to have the data probably somewhere next year.
Mm. And you said that it's an app, and is this app showing the tracking results, or is it only providing advice, or how is the measurement part?
It's doing both. So we're measuring with the accelerometer, wrist-on accelerometer. We're measuring activities. Actually mainly steps, and the activities are depicted in the app, so people get an overview of how they're doing in terms of activities. And we of course hope that they gradually increase their activities after the surgery. So on day one, they may not do a lot, but we follow them for 1 year, and we hope that after the year, people are more or less back to where they were, or maybe even are better than where they were before the surgery. And we give people feedback on that in the app, so people can really keep track on how they're doing, and use the feedback to keep on progressing. And so that's one bit of the app, and the other
Mm.
bit is based on the advice that we got from our experts, and that's really providing people with information on when to resume activities of daily living. So when can they best start walking again, start cycling, which is very important for Dutch people,
Mm.
start working, all sorts of activities of daily life. So when can they do this, and how can they do this?
Mm.
So, for example, talking about walking, uh, people get advice to use crutches in the beginning, and then later on not using the crutches anymore. We have all sorts of videos in the app that people can use for when they want to resume those activities, and if they're interested in how to do so.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. And do you have already collected reference data? How does the trajectory of daily steps go in the rehabilitation process?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So, I said already before that after 1 year, we hope that people are back to their their normal activities, and then it's actually not so much the activities that they had before the surgery, because of course they had the surgery for a reason. The people had a bad knee, so they needed their knee to be replaced. So we actually want the activities to be back to how they were before they even had the knee issues.
Mm.
And this is also what we see in the literature, that after the surgery, activities typically improve of course over the board. There's individual participant variation in that, but over the board, people improve their activities after the surgery, and they get back to levels of activity that that they used to have, way before the surgery, when they were doing a lot better.
Mm.
Yeah.
And do you see in the reference data any special points you could think that, of course, it increases, but it's probably not linear in the beginning when you're using
No.
crutches? You probably less the pain probably
Yeah.
goes in some stages. So is there something special in the graph that you could say?
I think so. There's of course a lot of activities that matter to people. So for some, it's being able to walk again. For others, it's being able to cycle again. For others, it's being able to play with children, or their grandchildren again, or going back to work, or playing their favorite sports again.
Mm.
So it really depends on what matters to the patient, and then what we typically see is that at some point they they think, oh, I can do this again, so oh, I can now uh, play with my grandchildren again, and then they start playing. So what we typically see is indeed not so much a linear increase in the activities, but more like a step. So in the beginning they start walking again, and then they
Mm.
start cycling again, maybe, and then start playing with their grandchildren again. So it's like stepwise increase of activities
Mm.
that we typically see.
Mm. And is there some critical times where you can basically see kind of a typical bad rehabilitation process or a good one? Is there some time
Yeah.
which is more critical than others?
Yeah. Well, so I think the issue at the moment is that we don't know that very well. So, like I said, people get their surgery and they get checkups through the hospital. Some people get physiotherapy, but that depends on what sort of insurance they have in the Netherlands. I'm not sure how it is in other countries, but at least in the Netherlands, getting physiotherapy is really depending on what sort of insurance you have. And then, typically the focus is not so much on when can people start doing things again and how should they be doing things. That is really something that's missing in the literature and also in clinical practice. To answer your question, we actually don't really know what the critical points are, and that's something we would like to get a better grasp on in this particular project.
Mm. And have you looked also like walking bout durations or kind of the distribution of steps within a day, or do you look
Yeah.
them only on a daily level?
Yeah. So the advice that we give people are that those advices are on different levels. So I don't know exactly modalities by heart, but I think it's something like being able to walk for half an hour and being able to walk for an hour
Mm.
with crutches, without crutches. Um, and then we have, really advices for all these different modalities. We track the people on how they're doing on these modalities. And once they are able to do a certain activity well enough. So once they are able to walk for half an hour with crutches, then they move up to a different step, and then they get advice on the next step. So then they get rid of the crutches, or then they maybe do it for an hour instead of half an hour.
Mm.
And so it's really like gradually trying to increase the level of the duration. So going from half an hour to an hour to even more, and also the difficulty or the intensity, if you like. So doing it without support. Oh, sorry, with support, with the crutches or with other supports. We also advise people to not go alone in the beginning, but go with someone else when they're walking on the street.
Yeah.
And then going, gradually increasing that to eventually being able to do it without support.
Yeah, yeah. And basically now you're using a wrist-worn accelerometer to mainly count steps. Do
Yeah.
you see that, for example, thigh-worn accelerometer would give more interesting data? What could be the variables that could be meaningful for the rehabilitation process in knee replacement or any other condition?
Yeah. Yeah. I think having other uh, yeah having other ways to capture physical activity beyond only steps is of course very important. Like I said, our advices are mainly targeted to the duration and also the difficulty or the intensity, if you like. Frequency is also an important issue. So how often do you walk, or how often do you play sports again, or do household activities or whatever. And being able to capture those different modalities, so the duration, the intensity, and the frequency, that of course gives a lot of extra detail, a lot of extra insights um, beyond what we have so far.
Mm, yeah, yeah. And if I kind of try to think this through, that you have a new knee and there's a lot of things are painful after the surgery,
Yeah,
and then if you can measure the accelerations of the thigh, so basically faster the thigh is moving, probably we can assume that there's a larger forces on the knee, at least on average, and that's probably larger forces result in larger pain in many cases. So do you think there would be kind of, we could see that people have much smaller accelerations in the beginning, and then the accelerations of the thigh increase when the tissues kind of have recovered from the surgery? Or what would be your guess?
Yeah. Well, we try to make our advice time dependent and not so much pain dependent. So we try, yeah, of course, an important uh, important is that the wound is healed properly, and that there isn't any damage possible by doing certain activities. But other than that, we advise people not to focus too much on the pain, but more on when they can do certain activities and how they can do that. So yeah, we're hoping that the pain doesn't play a big role in the recovery, but that's something we should we should look at when we have the data. But I think in general you're probably right that people, when they gradually increase their activities, that could be captured in the forces that we see on the knee, and that could be captured with accelerometers on the lower extremities. So you're talking biomechanics again, aren't you?
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
And you have chosen now the knee replacement surgery. There's also quite common is hip with the older people. What other kind of surgeries you see as a good candidates for this kind of digital interventions
Yeah.
where you measure something and give advice?
Yeah. Well, I think the methods that we are developing now, with the advice and the algorithm behind it, so that the advices are provided at stages in the rehabilitation where they matter the most to participants. I think those ideas and the logistics around the development of the app, they can be applied in different other patient populations, people who get surgery, but maybe also people who recover from other diseases or treatments or what have you. The idea is actually also not new, because the app that we now have is actually a third version of the app, and the earlier versions were used on people who got a gynecological surgery.
Mm,
Um, I wasn't involved in those projects, but I'm now working on this project and trying it on the knee surgery patients. But I can imagine that it can be work for actually a lot of patients.
mm. And what are your future plans with the app? Do you plan to release it open source? Do you maybe plan to make a spin-off company, or what's your plan with the app?
Yeah, well, there is actually a spin-off company. That's something that we have. Other people used the idea and developed the spin-off company, and they are now trying to implement the the app in the patients groups, of which we already know that the apps work.
Mm,
So for the gynecological surgery patients, but also for the knee replacement surgery patients, the implementation is now taking place. So that's what the spin-off company does, really helping with the implementation, because that's of course always a difficult thing. We as researchers can come up with all sorts of fancy ideas, but like really implementing it into clinical practice, that's a whole different story. So that's what spin-off company is doing. And we as researchers, we're trying to improve the app and the algorithms behind it. So yeah, like I said already, we're having these advices, and they're based on the stage in which the patient is. We have the steps that we use in the advice. But yeah, of course, that can be progressed. So we can, like you said, maybe also use the accelerometers to measure intensity and duration and frequency, and then build that into the algorithms and into the app. So that those are new avenues that we can go on, and of course, testing it with other patient populations. That's another thing.
Mm. Yeah, it would be interesting to discuss this more, but I think you have a next meeting coming up, so I think it's a good time to wrap this up. Maybe we have another recording one day. But thanks, Peter. This was really interesting.
Okay, you're welcome.